Hey Lynn, it's such a honour to speak to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. We are obviously here to speak about Scared to Death, which is shown at FrightFest, a Glasgow film festival. In this, you take part in a séance. Now, in your career, you've been in a few different séance scenes already. Have you ever been involved in a real one? Are you a big believer in the spirit world?
I don't think I've ever been, the closest I've been was Insidious when we had a seance scene in that movie. It's a little creepy because whatever you believe in, I do believe in energy and I do believe you can summon the kind of thing around yourself that you pick and you choose in a way that we have some control over that. So I've never really reached out for a real seance. I'd be actually a little too worried to do that. There's a lot of ghosts around, so who knows?
You can maybe put that on your bucket list.
Really. Well,
Yeah,
I think you get, after you die, I think you get one.
that one. Now, you've worked in the horror genre for over 40 years. So to me, it would be fascinating to know, to find out, what horror movie genuinely scares you or really creeped you out.
That's a good question. I think the first films that really scared me was Hitchcock. I thought Psycho was one of the scariest films still that I've ever seen. And I think it's partly to make a good horror film, you've got to draw your audience into the characters because if you buy into the personalities and the temperature of the characters, it's much scarier. If you stay removed, if you're really just watching the story unfold, it doesn't really take you with it. And I think you can kind of make a choice about that sometimes. There's been stuff I've seen, I'll turn on something on television that I don't know too much about. I don't like gruesome. Gruesome scares me. I'm not so afraid of ghosts. I sort of have made friends with the ones I think are around me. Um, but gore and evil is a little bit scarier to me than ghosts, actually.
Did you ever see Midsummer that was
Yes,
out
I did.
a
Oh,
few,
yes. Yeah,
few
I
years
did. I
ago?
have seen it.
I thought that was a great balance between, there is gore, obviously, but it's just really like psychological, horror as well.
Yes, I
Um,
thought it is. That was a very scary movie. I'd actually like to see that again because I was so drawn into it.
Now you must get, a ton of horror screenplays, every week or every month. So what was it about, this screenplay from, Paul Boyd, that really piqued your interest?
Well, Paul, I actually met Paul. It was during the pandemic. We did sort of a live action, um, uh, I forget what it's called now. But where, it was all on screen because we couldn't meet in person anyway. And I thought it was a very interesting. I was trying to just remember what it was called. Um, it had kind of a long title, but um, so I met Paul then, and I was very impressed with his ideas, and he's a really wonderful person as well. So when this came along and they asked me if I wanted to be involved, I liked the script. I thought it looked fun and interesting to do. And I liked the role. It actually started out a little bit differently because Bill Moseley is also in the film. And originally, I think it's fine if I say this, Bill was supposed to do the role that I did. He was supposed to be the studio head. And I said, wouldn't it be more interesting maybe to have a female studio head and have her be the real bitch? And then Bill play the psychic because I didn't want that was it. They asked me to play the psychic and I've done my psychic. Elise in Insidious is the classic psychic. I will never play another psychic except for her if I ever have the opportunity again. So I was eager to work with Paul again, but I thought that would be a good switch up. So he liked the idea. So we made my character this sort of nasty, jaded studio head, which had a little bit of comedy to it as well. And I really had a lovely time working with him. And Eric Barrett also, who they work together often. and they're a really great team and great guys. So it was very fun. We had a very good time on the film.
It's such a funny and interesting character, Max. How liberating is it to to play that bitch, to let rip and be mean to your PA Jasper or your co-star Kurt Dimer, who you've
It's
got some great dialogue with.
Well, it's fun because usually you have to hold your tongue in real life, and if you don't, you have repercussions. The one thing wonderful about filmmaking in general and fantasy is you really get to live out the things that you will be punished for in real life. But when the camera stops rolling, you go have a soda or a cup of tea, and you're back to normal. So
Max, I suppose, in a way, is kind of like your Larry David, completely unfiltered, says stuff that you've not meant to say.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was my favorite part about her is that she was unfiltered. I mean, she's stoned a little bit half the time but she's, she doesn't look out for people's feelings. She doesn't censor what she says because she wants to protect somebody. I mean, Jasper's character sort of softens her up a little bit. And that was something I really wanted to do. And I talked to Paul about that. I wanted you to see her vulnerability also. Um, those couple of scenes on the phone where she's worried about someone other than herself. And
What I thought was quite interesting is how your character Max always emphasizes that it's not Maxine, it's not Maxie. Are those the sorts of details that help you get into a character's, headspace and embody, how uptight she is?
yeah, kind of. And she kind of wants to be a guy. It's like she wants the male, the hormones, whatever she's got in there, to take over. I think she resists her own femininity, even though she tries to act, try to act quote sexy, but she's not really sexy. She's just mean. you know, and so I think that that's part of it that, don't call me Maxine, because that's a girl's name. That's a woman's name. Just call me Max. It's got more of a bite to it.
Now, you mentioned already, the comedy elements, and I think it's fair to say that you've got, some comedy chops. We've seen it in There's Something About Mary, we've seen it in Kingpin. Um, some of the one-liners in this were great, do you want a history of my ovaries? Are you an actor or a pervert? Um, were all of those scripted, or did you get a chance to improv and come up with some of those yourself?
We did improv a little, and Paul was very open about that, and Eric both. If I had an idea, I I realized I'm a pretty good writer, and especially in terms of my own characters, because I often am inspired by something that the original writer says, but that makes me want to either embellish something or change something. And I've gotten very confident about it's not just for the sake of changing. It usually makes the story richer or more understandable. So they very much trusted me, and which is also it's a wonderful feeling to feel that you're a collaborator. You're not just, being kind of pushed from one square to the next and stuff. And I think you gain that confidence as you get older, as well. So, and also they were respectful of my history, and the amount of work I've gratefully, knock on wood, I've done. Even for me, I go, how did that all happen? It all feels like a dream. Thomas. It all feels like a dream in a way.
I'm a big fan of, practical FX, real locations instead of a kind of studio. You guys filmed in the historic, Woodbury Story House. As an actor, to be on location instead of a studio built set, how much does that help your performance?
Huge, huge. I mean, I television is often you're on well, at least you used to be, not so much anymore. Television now is made like film and they're in locations and all this stuff. But it actually is kind of a double-edged sword because there's something wonderful about having to pretend, which is really what we're doing, on some level, on the simplest level. It's like when you're a kid, let's pretend I'm in the forest. And you buy into your own fantasy. So I think it's important as an actor to be able to create that for yourself if you're not given the reality of the scene and the details. So but it's when you are in the real place, I mean, it's like real things on the table, you know, touching something. I remember, especially in theater, that was very important because you'd rehearse in a rehearsal room, and you know, instead of picking up you know, a book, you'd have something like this. And but when you have the real book, that changes the way you behave also, because it's got pages and it's got texture. I am a very physical actress. I'm a very physical person. I'm very aware of the way things feel. And so it's helpful for me when I do have the real thing. But you got to be able to do both, I think, as an actress.
In your career, you're also an actor, writer, an exec producer, in Scared to Death. You've worked with some of the greatest directors. Wes Craven. Have you got ambitions to step behind the camera and be a director? Is that something you're harboring feelings for?
I don't think so. I don't know enough about camera. I really don't know enough. Um, I feel very confident making contributions as an actress, but I don't know if I really would want, I mean, directing is really hard. I mean, first of all, you're in charge of pretty much everything. You know, everyone comes to you with a question. You know, how do you want the camera? I don't know. You know, but I want it on. Make sure it's
On and
running
on.
when I mean, but I'm not a student of film in that way. I mean, I think I'm too emotional to be a director. I'd be a screamer, probably. And
And
a
one
laugh.
and one final question, Lynn. Actors sometimes say they've got a rough idea if a movie is going to be successful. Um, what I would want to know is, do you have the same sense when it comes to characters and if they'll connect with an audience? Because the overwhelming love for Elise from Insidious, I think, has been a huge, huge thing.
I had no idea that Elise was going to become a popular character. Zero idea. I mean, I'm still to this day a little bit confused by that. I don't know. And the only thing I could come up with is Elise is a giver and not a taker. And that people, that sort of tunes into something subliminal in people, that people are manipulators and takers and fearful. And she is really, there's a purity to the spirit that she has, um, and the contribution she makes. I actually just was having this conversation. She's not a goody goody. You know, she'd really rather be left alone. I mean, that was something I told Lee Winnell I always saw Elise as a loner, like that she was a single, she was a single kid in her family. And all of a sudden, Lee Winnell gives me cousins and sisters and brother. You know, he gave me this whole family, which I don't know which one it was. I think it was the third Insidious or the second, maybe. Um, and that wasn't how I saw her at all. But the interior of her, I always saw as being a very she'd rather be by herself with her dog. I mean, if she had, but she's a listener. She's a fantastic listener, and she's like a little radio. You know, she hears more than most people, and it's partly a gift and partly a skill, I think. And the fact that seems to be so generous of spirit, but also with a bite. You know, like she knocks out the bad guy too if she has to. And I think she's kind of a fantasy figure in that way. We all like to be that. I think I would like to be generous of spirit, but stick up for what's right at the same time. And so I think she kind of represents that kind of odd justice that's very familial, you know, very easy to understand.
Can we expect her to return? Insidious 6 has been delayed until next year.
Yeah. I don't know too much about what's going to happen with it. Um, there was a script, you know, originally, and then things got changed around a little bit, and um, but I'm ready, willing, and able, just like Elise would be if it comes my way. I love the
Amazing.
series, and I love the character.
Amazing. Well, Lynn, you've been more than generous with your time. Best of luck with Scared to Death. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. You've been lovely. It's a pleasure to meet you, Thomas, and good luck to everything you're doing too. Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!